Hey folks, this is the HTC U11 Life. It's a U11 shrunk down in size and price to about $350. And it's quite amazing how much of the U11-ness it's retained. So without, further ado, I'm just going to put another U11 side by side, the actual U11 flagship. Here's the U11 on the right here, and here's the U11 Life on the left. And as you can see, pretty much a good resemblance. Let's flick them over so you can see what I'm saying. These are very slippery and my surface is slightly inclined here, but yeah, right? A little darker, the blue finish on this, but pretty much very similar. Dual LED versus single LED flash, that's about the only thing you'll notice. Look at these phones side by side. I mean, display size obviously matters, right? You have a 5.2-inch display on the U11 Life and a 5.5-inch display on the U11, but that's it. The single flash versus dual flash and the slightly darker color is how you can tell them apart. And in terms of user experience, you are at 90% of the experience of the U11 with the U11 Life. So now that I've kind of covered that and compared it for you, let's talk about this phone. So, when I got this phone to review under embargo, I was kind of mad at first. I was like, a mid-ranger, there'd been all these rumors of the U11 Plus, which also was announced, at the same time as this phone, just a few hours back. And I thought, I'm kind of bummed because I kind of want the U11 Plus, which, as we all know, looks fantastic and, certainly fixes some of the things that we wanted to see in an HTC flagship in 2017. But and then I started using this phone and it is kind of growing on me. I'm not like saying that it's the kind of phone you, my listeners, readers, viewers, are going to want, because you tend to be more into the flagship and high end. But at the same time, I have to be honest that there's a lot of people who are going to like this phone. So let me give you a quick tour. In the front, you've got this 5.2-inch display. Now, of course, it's not Quad HD like the U11 flagship. This is a 1080p display. But man, this display, in this class, I don't think I've seen a better, most beautiful display. It's at half brightness right now, and I'm in a relatively bright room. And as you can see, colors are gorgeous. Look at this, right? It's beautiful. Now, I'm running the Google Now launcher here, obviously. I can switch back to the standard launcher if you'd like, so you can have a look at what the HTC Sense Home looks like. And there you go. Here we are. So, slightly different experience, right? But look at the colors. Look at how these icons are just floating there on this phone's surface, right? I've got a little bit of glare here. But you can see this is a gorgeous screen with great viewing angles. Nothing's turning whitish when you, when you kind of like, a little bit of fade, but that's kind of normal for an IPS panel. And this is a Super LCD, which I believe is IPS LCD. So look at that Google Chrome icon. I mean, that's a really nice screen. So the screen is top notch, 5.2-inch 1080p. At the top here, a lot of dust here, as you can see, but at the top you've got a earpiece. There's a notification LED hidden here somewhere between the earpiece and the front-facing camera. The front-facing and rear-facing camera have the same specs, but the rear camera has autofocus. That's the only difference. So I'll get into the details of the cameras in a second. And then on the bottom here, you've got a pretty large bezel that's a little off-putting. But then again, the U11 regular is kind of like that too. And you get these a capacitive button and a fingerprint reader for a home button right there. As you can see, you've got a back button, home button / fingerprint, recent apps. So then in the back, right, fingerprint magnet, of course, and in fact, it is more of a fingerprint magnet than the original, than the U11 flagship, and I'll tell you why that is.
Back from a search.
Hello? I don't know what that was about. Google Assistant, I guess. It's got a lot more fingerprintiness than the flagship. You can see I just cleaned it before doing the review and just touching it for a few seconds here. Also, you're seeing some scratches already. Not sure if you can tell, but there's a few scratches. And so there's a reason for that. And this is probably my number one disappointment with this phone. I as much as the display is pretty awesome and it really does bring 90% of the U11 experience to half the price, you know, instead of $700, $350, it is made of plastic, all plastic. So this back piece that looks like this, you know, glass treatment that the U11 flagship has, that's acrylic, which is why it's starting to scratch. And then the edge here, all of this surrounding area that on the U11 flagship is made of aluminum is plastic. So yeah, I mean, look, at this price point in this segment, I get it. They wanted to focus on the user experience and not so much the you know, the materials. The build quality is impeccable, don't get me wrong. This is definitely an HTC phone and it is IP67, so not 68 like the U11, but 67, which is great. It's splash resistant. But honestly, the plastic, it's hard to swallow these days when you can buy phones that are $100 less that are, you know, metal and glass, and or metal and glass. And so, you know, of course, yeah, you know, maybe you're not getting the same display and the same experience and the same camera, but you're getting, you know, more noble materials, which I think if you buy a phone is an important thing today. This is kind of something that we need to achieve across the board. All right, so let's talk about the back a little bit. I mentioned the fingerprint magnet and the materials. This camera, single LED flash, as far as I know, there could be two flashes in here. Maybe I'm not noticing two LEDs, but I think it's just single LED. And this camera, so 16 megapixel, I'm not sure about the size of the pixels, f/2.0, no OIS in autofocus, of course, BSI sensor, all that. The front camera, oh, look, I'm in the camera actually right now. The front camera is the same, exactly the same, 16 megapixel f/2.0 BSI, but it doesn't have autofocus and it's a bit wider angle so you can take selfies better. But that's it. And you're going to say on paper, that's like very meh, right? 16 megapixel f/2.0, everybody does that. The thing that astounded me in my time with this phone is how good the photos came out. And I think this is due to the ISP in here. Clearly, HTC has worked with Qualcomm, who makes the chip in this phone. It's a Snapdragon 630. So it's like an updated version of the 625. It's the same a chip that's in the Moto G4 Android One edition I just reviewed. And so let me show you some of the photos I've gotten out of this phone. Let me go to the gallery. And here, as you can see, very solid performance on this shot of the fall. It's strange because it's still dimming the display brightness here when I actually have it set not to dim the display brightness right now. Let me have a look just in case. Yeah, look, automatic brightness is off, yet the display keeps dimming automatically on me. So here we go. Really a beautiful a shot right here. Let me actually crank it. Like right now the brightness is way too low, so let me just crank that up so you can actually see it. This display gets super bright, and so I'm not quite sure why right now we're struggling so much with brightness. But here you go. Beautiful colors, beautiful reds. Great dynamic range in the sky here. So, you know, pretty impressive. Here's another really good shot. This is some graffiti nearby here. Here's my coffee shop in Portland, my favorite, Cafe Vita. And look at the sky. Look at the detail. This is 16 megapixel f/2.0, and I'm like, wow, it's doing really good. I snapped this shot like just randomly on the counter in the coffee shop, and it was dark, and it got this like superbly. I mean, look at how much detail there is, no noise. Yeah, I mean, really impressive little camera. I mean, it's not U11 flagship grade because there's no OIS, but look at this bouquet, completely natural bouquet here. Lots of detail on that flower. You know, it's pretty impressive. I mean, I can't really complain. And then I think I have more photos if I can get to them. There you go. There, you don't want to see that one. My spouse doesn't really like it when I show pictures of them on the air. So this one's a little overblown now that I've increased the brightness. Let me turn the brightness down a little. See, the brightness has gone back up now, so we're a little overblown. So there you go. Now, sorry, I seem to have gone back to the camera, which was not my intent. Let's go back to that photo. Now you can, I think, see and appreciate a little better. I'm going to try to bring the brightness down some more even, so you can see that there is a really good contrast there. The camera's not doing adjusted. There's really good contrast between the candle part, the flame, and the candle part. Yeah, I think this is, there you go. You're seeing it a little better now. This iPhone recording I can't resolve this very well. And then, you know, there, look at that. This is at half brightness here on the display, and this is a shot from San Francisco, and it's really beautiful. So even low light is decent. Definitely good in most conditions. I'm pretty impressed with the camera and the display on this phone. You know, despite being not a U11, but a U11 Redux, U11 Life. So kudos to HTC for doing it right. One more thing I wanted to say is you get a lot of the HTC U11 experience. You get Sense UI, you get Edge Sense, right, where you squeeze the phone, and right now it starts the camera, right? And if you squeeze and hold, I've got it set to Google Assistant. That did not work for whatever reason. Let me try that again. I think it's hard to do with the tripod in the way. Let me use my other hand. Squeeze and hold. Hey Google, what's the weather right now?
Right now in Portland, it's 57 and cloudy. Today, it'll be cloudy with a forecasted high of 56 and a low of 44.
So, you know, the squeeze feature is there. It works. You can assign it to whatever you want, unlike the Pixel, which is really great. And that's the same as U11. Now, let me give you a tour of the edges because I want to talk about the next thing. On top here, you have a SIM slot. So this has 3 gigs of RAM and 32 gigs of storage, and a Snapdragon 630, as I said. 3 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of storage. In the SIM slot here is also a micro SD slot for up to 2 terabytes. See, it's 2 terabytes. Here you can really see this is made of plastic. You can see some of the molding and mold lines. It's not that great. And there's a secondary microphone that's right next to the pinhole for the SIM card. So you know what happens when you have a secondary microphone right next to the pinhole for the SIM card, right? You don't? Well, you accidentally insert the SIM removal tool in the microphone, and that's not good for the microphone. So just be aware not to do that. I've done this on this phone. I've done it on other phones where that was the case because you're just not really looking very carefully, and boom. So design thing, HTC in the future, don't put your secondary mic so close to the SIM tray hole. Nothing on the left-hand side. It's completely devoid of anything except, of course, the squeeze sensors in there. At the bottom, you do have a bottom firing speaker. It's mono. This does not have boom sound, and a primary microphone. And the USB Type-C port, yes, it's USB Type-C, is offset here to the right. This is a very HTC thing. We've seen this on the M7, HTC One M7 a few years back, and others. And I kind of like it. It's very distinct in HTC. It takes a bit of getting used to because you by default want to kind of plug down here without looking, but you have to remember it's on the side. And then here on the right is volume rocker, power key, plastic, but the power key, just like on the U11 flagship, has you know, a ridged area, which is great. And I've talked about the camera, I've talked about the plastic build, I've talked about how awesome the display is, and the camera's pretty damn good. So my takeaway is, you know, you get the U11 experience. You know, AirPlay support works because, as you know, HTC Connect is something that the U11 has and other HTC phones in the past have had. It's a unique thing. Very few Android phones support AirPlay. You know, the squeeze feature. There's that assistant that that HTC has baked in, which is not really useful. As you can see, I have Sense, what's it called, the newsfeed thing disabled. It does support Alexa, just like the U11, except that you can't call Alexa by voice. You actually have to bring Alexa up with a button or whatever to get to her So, Alexa support, but not as seamless with, dual keyword recognition. So you can't do Google Assistant and Alexa. It has to be Google Assistant only for, you saying, okay, Google. And a bunch of my phones are going to go off. It's going to be fun. Anyway, so there you go. That's in a nutshell. Now, one important thing you should know, because this has USB-C and you saw there's no headphone jack, this is the first mid-range phone that I'm aware of that doesn't have a headphone jack, and that is weird. I mean, look, I'm not a big fan of removing the headphone jack, you know how I feel, but on a flagship I can kind of see it. It's the way the future is going. And, maybe not. But on this phone it's kind of weird because it's not a phone, it's a mid-ranger. So what's in the box to compensate? I know what you're going to think. An adapter. No, actually, that's disappointing. There's no adapter in the box. There's no headphone jack adapter. Now, that being said, you're not missing out because the headphone jack adapter that comes with the U11 flagship sucks. The sound quality is terrible. I highly recommend if you're a U11 owner or if you're going to buy this U11 Life and you want to use 3.5mm headphones, that you go ahead and buy yourself the Pixel 2 headphone to USB-C adapter. It's great. It sounds not fantastic, but it sounds actually acceptable. But forget all this 3.5mm headphone jack madness, because HTC did include in the box the Usonic earbuds. Now, I'm not personally a big fan of them because I have very fancy audio tastes, but I have to admit that not many manufacturers, certainly not in the mid-range, include a pair of earbuds that have 1, noise cancellation, and 2, adapt to your hearing by measuring your, the inside of your ear canal to adjust the frequency response to match. That is unheard of on a mid-ranger, and it's in the box with this phone. So that's what I'm saying. 90% of the U11 experience in a mid-range $350 phone, with decent specs and a great display and a decent imaging system. So there you have it. Another thing to be noting, this is the US version of this phone. It's factory unlocked. There is going to be a version of this phone for T-Mobile that's going to sell for $299. So that's exciting because $299 on T-Mobile starts to be a much more appealing price in my opinion. And then the other thing to also keep in mind is that this phone is available in parts of the world as an Android One device. Yes, pure Android updated by Google. Very exciting. Now, this is not the Android One. As I pointed out, it is the HTC Sense version of the phone for the US market. And I like to run Google Now, so I'm going to go back to Google Now right now. Wherever that was, personalized. There we go. Change it back. Because then I feel like I almost have an Android One device with the tray here being a Google tray. So there you go. That's all you need to know about this phone. Honestly, if you are looking for a phone that from a major brand that is really decent and you want to spend half the price of a flagship, this is definitely something worth looking at. Just be aware that it is a fingerprint magnet because it's plasticky, and that does not mean it feels particularly cheap, although it definitely feels cheaper than the U11. But it does look great. It certainly looks the U11 part, and it certainly behaves 90% of like a U11 in terms of features. And finally, spec-wise, you're really not going wrong. And at $299 on T-Mobile, I think is great. At $350, it's actually $300 on T-Mobile. And $349, $350 unlocked, it might be worth it for some folks too. So you got it. That's it. The U11 Live. Thanks to HTC for providing me a review unit. And stay tuned for more reviews and unboxing on this channel. Please subscribe. Please like this video. Please subscribe to my podcast, mobiletechpodcast.com. That's mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on iTunes, on Pocket Cast, everywhere. That's where I discuss these devices in great detail with guests. And this channel is really just to kind of accompany the thing and give you an opportunity to see some of these phones in the flesh. So again, subscribe. Like this video, and don't forget to listen to the podcast. Cheers, folks. Stay tuned for more videos soon. Bye.